My name is Marissa Lane, and I never imagined that the morning I stepped onto the cross-country skiff with my parents would become the moment my entire life broke apart, and strangely, the moment it began again. The sun had only just risen over the Atlantic Ocean, stretching long silver lines across the water, and the gentle wind carried that familiar salt smell I had grown up with along the coast of Charleston, South Carolina, United States of America. Our house stood just a walking distance from the shoreline, a two-story white wooden home with light blue shutters and a wraparound porch that creaked every time a breeze passed through. I always thought of that house as peaceful, even if the people inside it were not. My parents never fully loved anyone except each other and money. I, for a long time, had just been an extra weight they carried. It was my dad, Gregory Lane, who invited me on the morning skiff ride. "One last ride before you go off to college," he said, acting like a father who cared. I wanted to believe him, because believing in good things made life easier. My mother, Denise, had waved from the porch, wearing that polished smile she used when neighbors were watching. It didn't reach her eyes. But the day was beautiful, and I wanted to float in the illusion of a kind family for just a little longer. Once we were out on the water, far enough that the house behind us blurred into the horizon, the boat rocked softly beneath my feet. The sky was wide and open, and I found myself relaxing in a way I hadn't in years. My dad kept his hands tight on the wheel, staring ahead with a tense jaw, while I sat on the edge of the skiff, letting my fingers drag through the cool water. My mother sat behind him, checking her reflection in her sunglasses. It was quiet, peaceful even. Too peaceful for what was coming. The calm shattered when my dad's phone buzzed. The sound sliced through the air, like a sharp blade. He glanced at the screen, and I saw the name before he tried to hide it. Harper and Cole Law Firm. My grandfather's lawyers. My father hesitated, then answered with a stiff voice, putting the call on speaker as if he wanted both of them to hear whatever news was coming. "Mr. Lane," a steady, professional voice said, "we're calling to confirm you received the formal reading of your father's will. As stated, your daughter, Marissa Lane, is now the sole heir to his estate. The total value is approximately $500 million. Congratulations to her." Silence rushed in after the words. A deep, suffocating silence. My mother froze with her hand midair, sunglasses reflecting the ocean. My dad did not breathe. His entire face changed, like something dark slipped down behind his eyes, covering whatever humanity was left. $500 million, he whispered, almost choking on it. "All to you." My heart pounded. I hadn't even known the amount. My grandfather, Robert Lane, had been a wealthy man, yes, but he lived simply. I thought he might leave money for my education, maybe a house someday. But $500 million? I couldn't speak. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Dad, I tried to say, but my voice cracked." He turned toward me slowly. Too slowly. Like a storm gathering strength. "You know what happens now," he muttered, his voice low and cracking like thin ice. Before I even understood, he lunged. His hands clamped around my arms with a force I didn't know he had. His fingers dug into my skin. My mother didn't scream. She didn't even stand. She just watched, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips, like this was something they had already discussed. "If you're gone," my dad said, pulling me closer to the edge, "it all comes to us." That was the moment everything inside me collapsed. And then he shoved me. There was no warning, no hesitation. One moment I was standing on the skiff, the next my body was flipping backward through the air. I hit the ocean like a stone dropped from a building. Water exploded around me, stabbing into my ears and eyes, swallowing me whole. The shock stole my breath. For a second, I couldn't tell which way was up. They thought I couldn't swim. But they were wrong. My grandfather had taught me when I was just 6 years old. Every summer, he took me out to the quiet coves near Folly Beach, teaching me how to float, how to kick, how to rise even when the waves crashed over me. "The sea is honest, Marissa," he always told me. "It can knock you down, but it won't lie about what it wants. People lie. The ocean doesn't." I had laughed then, not understanding. But now his words wrapped around me like a rope pulling me back to the surface. My lungs burned for air. My arms felt heavy, but I pushed upward, kicking hard until my head broke through the surface. I gasped, gulping salty air. Above the roar of my heartbeat, I heard my mother laugh. "Is she gone?" she called over the engine, her voice bright, almost cheerful. "Of course she's gone," my dad replied. "She never learned to swim." They didn't even look back to check. The skiff sped away, its engine roaring louder as it cut across the water, shrinking into a white speck against the endless blue. The people who were supposed to protect me, my own parents, had left me in the middle of the ocean for money. I lay on my back, letting the water hold me. Tears slid down my temples, mixing with salt water. I should have been terrified. I should have panicked. But instead, something inside me hardened. Something fierce. Something that felt like survival and justice woven together. "You're going to regret that," I whispered, the words trembling out of me. Then I turned, took a breath, and began to swim toward the faintest shadow of land far, far away. I didn't know how long it would take. I didn't know if I would make it. All I knew was this: I wasn't dying for them. I don't know how many hours I swam. Time on the open water stretches in strange ways, longer, heavier, as though every second weighs a little more than the one before it. The sun climbed high, warming the back of my neck even as the ocean drained the heat from the rest of my body. My arms felt like they belonged to someone else. My legs stiffened with each kick. Still, I kept moving. Stroke, breath, hope. Stroke, breath, memory. The shoreline was a distant smudge at first, nothing more than a thin promise on the horizon. Slowly, painfully, it became real. When I finally reached the rocky edge of a small inlet, the exhaustion hit me all at once. My fingers scraped the stones as I dragged myself onto the narrow strip of land. I collapsed on my side, coughing up seawater, the taste of salt thick on my tongue. My chest burned, my limbs trembled, and every breath felt like it belonged to a stranger. I lay there for minutes, maybe longer, letting the realization sink in that I was alive. My parents had left me to drown, and yet I had survived. A voice broke through the roar of the ocean. "Hey, are you okay?" I lifted my head weakly. A couple was walking a golden retriever along the rocky path. The man, tall with sandy hair and a gentle expression, hurried toward me. The woman, shorter with dark curls and wide brown eyes, followed right behind him. "Oh my God," she gasped, dropping to her knees beside me. "You're freezing. Ethan, get the blanket." The man, Ethan, ran back to their car parked near the trail. The woman wrapped her arm around me, helping me sit up. Her name was Sophie. I would learn a moment later. "What happened to you?" she asked softly. The words tumbled out before I had time to think. "My parents tried to kill me." My voice cracked halfway through, sounding small and far away, as if it belonged to some frightened child instead of me. Sophie blinked, shocked but not disbelieving. That surprised me. Most adults would have assumed I was confused or lying. But she simply tightened the towel around my shaking shoulders. "We're going to take you home with us," she said. "You need warmth and food. Then we call the police." When Ethan returned with the blanket, he wrapped it around me gently, his hands steady and warm. "We live just 10 minutes from here," he said. "Can you walk? Or should I carry you?" "I can walk," I whispered, though my legs disagreed. They helped me stand, supporting my weight until I found my balance. Their car, a silver sedan with beach sand sprinkled across the floor mats, smelled like pine air freshener and dog treats. I slid into the back seat with their golden retriever curled beside me, pressing warm fur against my arm as if sensing I needed comfort. Their house, located in a quiet neighborhood in Savannah, Georgia, was a cozy brick home with a wide porch and flower pots arranged neatly by the steps. Inside, the air was warm and smelled faintly of coffee and lemon soap. The contrast to the cold ocean felt almost unreal. They guided me to a cushioned armchair near the fireplace, while Ethan turned on a kettle. I noticed everything in strange, vivid detail. The shelves filled with books. The framed photographs of vacations in Colorado and Vermont. The little glass jar on the coffee table labeled London trip, pound savings. Inside were a few £5 and £10 notes mixed with some spare dollars, simple, ordinary things. So ordinary it nearly brought tears to my eyes. I had just come from a nightmare, and here I was in a home where people saved money for dreams, not destruction. Sophie handed me a mug of hot tea. Drink slowly. You'll warm up soon. I sipped the tea carefully, letting the heat spread through my chest. As my hands steadied, Ethan handed me his phone. You should call someone you trust, he said. A friend? Family? Anyone who can help. There was only one group of people I trusted. My grandfather's lawyers, Harper and Cole. I dialed their number. Harper and Cole Law Firm. This is Julia Harper speaking, came the familiar voice. Julia, I said, my voice cracking. It's Marissa. A pause. Mississippi Lane? Are you all right? We spoke with your father this morning. Julia, I said again, taking a shaking breath. My parents tried to kill me. My dad pushed me off the skiff after the call about the inheritance. They thought I couldn't swim. Her inhale was sharp and immediate. When she spoke again, her tone changed completely, firm, precise, protective. Marissa, listen carefully. Tell me where you are. I explained everything. The skiff, my mother's laughter, swimming for hours, the couple who rescued me, their home in Savannah. Are Ethan and Sophie still with you? She asked. Yes. That is good. You have witnesses. What happened to you is attempted murder, and the law takes that seriously. I'm calling the police and the district attorney. Stay where you are. We will protect you. I almost cried when she said we. It was the first time in years someone had spoken to me with such certainty, as if my life mattered. Within an hour, there was a knock at the door. 2 detectives entered. Detective Marcus Hayes, a tall, calm man with gray hair at his temples, and Detective Olivia Price, sharp-eyed and steady, someone who looked like she had walked through storms and never once stumbled. They interviewed me on the living room couch while Sophie sat beside me, offering silent comfort. The detectives asked clear, methodical questions, where exactly the skiff had been, what I heard, what I saw, what my parents said. They spoke to Ethan and Sophie, too, recording everything. When they finished, Detective Price folded her notebook and said, Your parents think you're dead. That gives us one chance. One chance for what? I asked, leaning forward. To catch them celebrating your death, and tie it directly to the inheritance motive, she said. Your lawyers are coordinating with us. We're going to your house in Charleston. Plainclothes officers will be waiting inside before your parents return. Detective Hayes nodded. When they walk through that door, thinking they've killed you, they'll incriminate themselves. They always do. I felt a strange ache in my chest. Not sadness, exactly. More like the final breaking of something I had been pretending still existed. That used to be my house, I whispered. It still is, Detective Price said gently. And after this, it will never feel unsafe again. They gathered their things, promised updates, and left the house. The door closed softly behind them, leaving me with Ethan and Sophie, the quiet hum of the heater, and the weight of everything that had just begun. I didn't know then how the night would end. I only knew this. My parents' home, my home, was no longer waiting for them. Something else was justice. The next evening felt strangely quiet, as though the air itself was holding its breath. I sat alone in a small guest room inside a state-owned safe house on the outskirts of Atlanta, Georgia. The room wasn't cold, yet I kept pulling the blanket tighter around myself, as if my body remembered the ocean's grip from the day before. The plain cream-colored walls reflected the warm yellow light from the bedside lamp, and the sheets beneath me smelled like laundry soap, clean, soft, distant, like a hotel that wasn't meant to be lived in, only passed through. I still felt like a ghost wandering through someone else's world. I wrapped my hands around a mug of hot chocolate, trying to absorb its warmth into my bones. My phone lay beside me, screen dark but filled with the promise of news I did not know whether to dread or crave. I had been told not to contact my parents under any circumstances. Safety comes first, my lawyers had repeated more than once. For the first time in my life, People were protecting me, genuinely, with no hidden motives, and I didn't quite know how to receive that kind of help. Throughout the evening, short updates came one at a time from Julia Harper, my grandfather's lawyer. Each message tightened the knot in my stomach. Our team is in position. The officers are inside the house on Willow Lane. Your parents left the harbor 10 minutes ago. Everything is ready. I stared out the window at the quiet Atlanta street outside. Cars drove past now and then, lights glowing softly in the dusk. Nothing about the neighborhood looked dramatic or dangerous. It was strange to think that somewhere miles away, in my childhood home, a trap had been prepared for the two people who were supposed to love me. The idea twisted something inside me, sadness, betrayal, and a sharp sting of anger that hadn't softened since the moment they shoved me into the ocean. To calm myself, I closed my eyes and pictured the house they were walking toward. The house on Willow Lane with the oak tree whose branches reached wide like arms. The tree where my grandfather once carved our initials into the trunk during one warm summer afternoon. The porch swing he hung with his own hands when I was 8, swaying gently whenever the breeze rolled in from the water. I imagined the silver truck my father always parked crooked in the driveway. My mother's red car with the dented door she never bothered to fix. That home had carried years of memories, birthdays, holidays, quiet dinners, loud arguments. Now it stood waiting for the moment that would destroy the illusion of what our family had once pretended to be. My phone buzzed in my hand, jolting me. Julia was calling. "Marissa," she said, her voice tight but steady. "They're in custody." My heart thudded. "Tell me," I whispered. Julia took a breath and began describing everything in clear detail, as though she knew I needed every second of the story to make sense of what was happening. She told me that my parents came home laughing, the kind of light, careless laughter people use when they believe the universe has handed them a prize for free. They were still damp from the sea spray, probably from celebrating somewhere along the coast, thinking the ocean had swallowed their last obstacle to wealth. My mother had stepped inside first, dropping her beach bag on the floor and kicking off her sandals. "Well, that was easier than I thought," she had said. $500 million for a swim." My father followed her, brushing salt from his arms. He smirked and said, "We should send flowers to the ocean." They walked into the living room, my living room, discussing everything they planned to buy. My mother wanted a penthouse overlooking New York City, with windows so tall they made her feel like she owned the sky. She also mentioned wanting a vacation villa somewhere in Europe, maybe near the coast of Spain, where she could spend summers drinking wine by the shore. My father, ever the dreamer of status, wanted a high-rise apartment in Chicago, investments that would multiply the money into billions, and a sports car costing more than $300,000, just to make other people stare. They had no idea that every word was being recorded. Julia's voice softened as she continued. That's when the officers stepped out. I pictured it clearly. Detective Marcus Hayes emerging from the kitchen, tall and calm, badge in hand. Detective Olivia Price descending from the staircase with a kind of quiet confidence that freezes anyone in place. 2 more officers rising from the living room couch. Another stepping from the hallway near my old bedroom, the one with faded blue walls and a bookshelf of mysteries I used to devour. "Gregory Lane." "Denise Lane," Detective Price announced, her voice firm and steady. "You are under arrest for the attempted murder of your daughter, Marissa Lane, conspiracy to commit murder and fraud related to inheritance." My mother had gone pale, her face draining of all color. "That's impossible," she whispered. "She's dead." My father raised his voice, furious and desperate. "You have no proof." Detective Hayes then pressed play on a small recorder. The house echoed with my mother's voice. "Well, that was easier than I thought. $500 million for a swim." Then my father's voice followed. "We should send flowers to the ocean." Julia paused, letting the weight of it settle. The look on their faces, they couldn't deny their own words. It was as if they were hearing their souls confess. I imagined their expressions: shock, fear, the sudden collapse of their plan. I imagined them standing in the same living room where we used to decorate the Christmas tree, where my grandfather once watched me practice piano, where birthday candles were blown out year after year. Now that room had become the place where their freedom ended. "They're handcuffed now," Julia said. "The officers are transporting them to the county jail. You're safe, Marissa. Completely safe." When the call ended, I set my phone down carefully, as though it were made of glass. I sank back onto the bed, staring at the ceiling. The quiet of the room felt deeper now, filled with invisible echoes of the life I had just escaped. "They try to kill me for money," I whispered into the stillness. But another truth rose inside me, steady, unbroken, powerful. They didn't win. And for the first time since the ocean swallowed me, I felt like I was finally breathing again. The trial began on a cool morning in Atlanta, Georgia, the kind of morning when the air feels crisp enough to cut through nerves, but soft enough to let hope breathe. I stood outside the courthouse for a moment before entering, staring at the white stone building with its tall columns and sharp lines. It looked stern, unbreakable, like the kind of place where truth had no choice but to rise. Inside, the smell of old paper, polished floors, and freshly brewed coffee filled the air, oddly comforting for a place that would decide the fate of my parents. I walked into the courtroom with Julia Harper at my side, her presence as steady as always. Daniel Cole, her law partner, joined us at the table. I wore a navy dress and a simple silver necklace my grandfather had given me years ago. I wanted to carry a piece of him with me, the man who had believed in me even when my own parents did not. Across the room sat my mother and father, each surrounded by their own attorneys. My father stared at the table, refusing to meet my eyes. My mother looked at me once, her eyes red and unreadable. Anger, regret, disbelief. I couldn't tell. Maybe all three lived inside her now. Judge Eleanor Brooks, a woman with calm gray eyes and a voice that carried the weight of experience, presided over the courtroom. The jury, 12 strangers from different parts of America, watched everything with quiet intensity. Their faces revealed nothing, but their silence felt heavy, like they already sensed the truth behind every breath spoken in the room. The prosecution began with the facts, cold, hard, undeniable facts. They presented the will that named me heir to my grandfather's $500 million estate. Then came the phone records showing the call from Harper and Cole to my father on the skiff. There had been no storm, no accident, no emergency. The Coast Guard report confirmed perfect weather conditions on the day my parents claimed I fell overboard. Then came the recording. The entire courtroom listened as my mother's voice filled the room. $500 million for a swim. My father's voice followed, dripping with dark satisfaction. We should send flowers to the ocean. A soft gasp moved through the audience. I didn't look at my parents then. I didn't need to. Their words were enough. Next came the witness statements from Ethan and Sophie Miller, the kind couple who had saved me from the shoreline. They spoke clearly, respectfully, describing the moment I staggered into their view, drenched, shaking, and whispering the truth about the parents who had abandoned me to the sea. Their words grounded the horror of what happened in undeniable reality. When it was my turn to testify, my knees trembled as I walked to the stand. I had practiced the statement dozens of times, but nothing prepared me for speaking it with my parents only a few feet away. I loved my parents, I said, my voice unsteady at first. I trusted them. I believed they would protect me no matter what. But they chose money over me. They pushed me into the ocean and left me there. They thought I would drown so they could take what my grandfather left me. A silence fell so deep that even my heartbeat felt too loud. But I survived. I continued, forcing strength into my voice. And I'm here because people who didn't even know me, 2 strangers on a beach, 2 lawyers, detectives, the Coast Guard, believed my life mattered. When my own parents didn't. When I finished, Julia squeezed my shoulder gently as I returned to my seat. I didn't cry. I felt strangely light, as though speaking the truth had lifted something that had been pressing down on me for years, even before the ocean tried to claim me. My parents' lawyers argued desperately. They said it was an accident. They said my parents were joking on the recording. They tried to paint me as confused, traumatized, mistaken. But the evidence stood like a mountain they could not climb. When the closing arguments ended, Judge Brooks looked at my parents with a long, heavy gaze. It wasn't anger. It was disappointment, deep and human. "Gregory and Denise Lane," she said, her voice steady as polished stone. "This court finds you guilty of attempted murder in the first degree, conspiracy to commit murder, and fraudulent intention toward inheritance law." My mother's breath caught in her throat. My father's face crumpled for the first time. "For these crimes," Judge Brooks continued, "you are each sentenced to 35 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $50 million in fines and damages." The gavel struck once. Sharp. Final. The guards placed handcuffs on them. My mother cried. My father whispered something I couldn't hear. I didn't look away. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I needed to see the ending of the chapter they had written with betrayal. After the trial, life gradually reshaped itself. Harper and Cole helped me take legal control of the inheritance. $500,000,000, or roughly £390 million in London. The number felt unreal, like it belonged in a newspaper headline. What felt real were the choices. I bought a brick townhouse in Denver, Colorado, with tall windows and a small garden where I planted wildflowers. I kept my grandfather's Charleston home, but I changed the locks, the paint, and the furniture. I wanted it to be a place of healing, not a museum of grief. With part of the money, I started a foundation for children who survived family violence. We provided safe homes, therapy, and scholarships. Experts from Europe joined us, bringing years of experience. Lives changed. Futures brightened. Years later, I stood on the porch of the Charleston house. A little girl named Lena, one of the children from our program, laughed as she swung her legs on the porch swing my grandfather had once hung for me. Her foster parents, Jordan and Emily Carter, waved from the gate. "Thank you, Marissa," Emily called. "You're doing the hard work," I replied with a smile. "I'm just putting the money in the right place." At night, when the house grew quiet, I sometimes remembered the cold shock of the ocean and my mother's laugh. But then I remembered Ethan and Sophie, Julia, Detective Price, Judge Brooks, and the children now playing in my garden. My parents had tried to kill me for $500 million. Instead, that money became the foundation of my new life, and the beginning of many others. And that is how I, Marissa Lane, turned the worst thing my parents ever did into the best thing that ever happened to me.